Right, so what we're going to look at here is the idea of dilution. Okay, now dilution is when we have a solution and we basically just add some water to it. Okay, and usually what we want to do is we want to find out, the new concentration of the newly diluted solution. Okay, and now there's basically one key idea that is basically how we deal with all dilution problems. Okay, and that idea, okay, so this is really essential. This is what everything about dilution revolves around, is that the amount of substance is constant. Okay, so when we add water to a solution, okay, we're not changing the amount of substance already in the solution. Okay, and that's what we need to use to calculate this kind of stuff. So the amount of substance is constant. Okay, so that's really essential. Okay, so when we're adding water to a solution, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're always going to want to find out the amount of substance in the solution. Okay, to start with. Okay, so we know that what we've got is we know that the number of mole of stuff in a solution is equal to the molar concentration, Cn, times the volume. And similarly, we know that the mass of substance in a solution is the concentration by mass times the volume. Okay, and so we'll often use these formulas. So this is just a rearrangement of that standard C equals M over V, or M or N, so M/N over V. I'll just write that there. But yeah, so C equals M over V or C equals N over V. They're the two formulas. We can rearrange those to get both of these. Okay, and so what this does is this allows us to calculate the amount of substance in a solution to begin with. So if these are the initial concentration and the initial volume, same over here, then we can figure out the initial number of moles or the initial mass of substance in the solution. Okay, and so that's where we start using the idea that the amount of substance is constant. Okay, so the crucial formula, the formula that you'll use in any sort of dilution question. Okay, if we know that the amount of substance is constant, and we know that the amount of substance is given by CV, okay, and the amount is either in mole or mass depending on what sort of concentration figure we have. Okay, so we know that because the amount of substance is constant, C1 V1 equals C2 V2. Okay, so this is what everything in dilution rolls around. Okay, it's a pretty straightforward formula. It's really easy to use. Okay, so basically, this is the concentration and the volume before dilution, then this is this gives, depending on what type of concentration we have, if it's by mass, by mole, or by mass. Okay, this will give the amount of substance in solution. And then as long as we use the same type of concentration, that is, as long as we use either mole concentration or concentration by mass, the same as what we used here, then C2 V2 will equal C1 V1. So the concentration after dilution and the volume after dilution, multiply them together and you'll get the same as the concentration before dilution times the volume before dilution. Okay, so this is a really important equation. This is basically saying the amount of substance before dilution is the same as the amount of substance after dilution, because when we're diluting a solution, all we're doing is adding water. We're not adding any substance. And that's why this idea is so crucial. Okay, and so this can be manipulated. If we're looking for the concentration after solution, we can manipulate this to C2 equals C1 V1 over V2. And say we want to find the volume, say we want to find the amount of water that we need to add to a solution in order to get it to a certain concentration, then we're going to use V2 equals C1 V1 over C2. So this formula is kind of a pretty easy sort of mathematical way to work it out, but you should be able to really follow the logic behind it. Okay, all we're saying is that the amount of substance before dilution is equal to the amount of substance after dilution. Okay, so really we can very easily deal with these sorts of questions without even using the formula. Okay, so if we wanted to do that, we could just work out the mole using all the mass using this. Okay, and then kind of construct this formula on our own using our logic of what's happening in the question. Okay, but this is this formula is really quite useful, extremely useful for all dilution questions. Okay, so we're going to do a little example here. Actually, we'll do an example in another video. Okay, so it's a pretty straightforward idea. Okay, we've got the amount of substance before dilution is the same as the amount of substance after dilution, and that's basically the one concept that it's important to remember in these sorts of questions. Okay, everything else you can kind of work through by logic and by understanding the idea of concentration. Okay, but this formula kind of will do it all for you. C1V1 is equal to C2V2.